Have you ever wondered why some people get their closing costs paid for by the seller and others don't? Today, I have Molly Zimmerman from Bell Bank Mortgage here to talk to us about that very topic. We'll bring her on in the end. We'll also be covering the current real estate market data for the Twin Cities and Wright County in particular. I'm Erica Carlson with a boutique brokerage called Bricks Real Estate. I help people buy and sell real estate, of course, all over the Twin Cities and the surrounding areas. If you learn anything new today, I hope you will join us and subscribe to my growing channels on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. If you have particular real estate questions or you're ready to take the next step, the link that I'm providing in the paragraph will take you to a place to connect with me. And you'll just click the first link. And of course, I want you to pick a time that works best for you. So the first thing is just looking at the Twin Cities at large, and hopefully you can see my screen. We're at a 7.46 on our Bricks market report for the buyer and seller. So instead of getting too technical about absorption rate, it's just a way to keep it really simple. We are in a seller's market right now. We're really at the peak at this time of year, and it helps us that there isn't that much snow on the ground. However, it has been Easter week, and we're going to talk about how that has affected the real estate market. But in general, again, it's a seller's market, and so therefore you need to be prepared for multiple offers or less concessions to be given from the seller. It's not the extreme seller's market by any means, and again, depending on where you're shopping exactly in the Twin Cities, you may feel this more. Price point affects it, type of property affects it, etc. So it's not the highest. It's definitely not. It's not even mid range. It's kind of moderate. Inventory is up over last year, but keep in mind, as a general rule of thumb in the United States, we're very low on inventory. So when I tell you it's up 13.3% over last year, that doesn't mean that much. It feels like to people shopping, there's not much to choose from, that the choices are limited. In terms of interest rates, I'm not a lender, so I'm just trying to give you general data without buying points. This is a 30-year fixed kind of general is about 7%. It fluctuates by the day. It fluctuates by the hour. It's incredibly important for you to work closely with your preferred lender if you're not purchasing with cash, so that you can understand, kind of a range that you should be working in, so that you're not putting yourself in a position where you're spending more on the house than you're prepared for. And then median days on market is 28. So, this again depends on the type of property and whatnot, but at least it prepares you a little bit that if you see a house sitting on the market for 30 days, it shouldn't be triggering you that house has sat for a long time. I mean, of course, if you're selling a house, that might feel like an eternity, but truly it's a moderate pace. It's a 28 days is reasonable. Of course, yours might take longer or slower. So again, if you're buying and you see one around that 1 month mark, it's not necessarily that the seller is doing anything wrong or that there's anything wrong with the house. That's the median days. That's what we expect. Earlier, we know it was Easter on Sunday. That deeply impacts things when we have a big holiday like this. This is, even if you're not Christian, it's a major holiday. A lot of things are shut down on Sundays. So we can't underestimate the factor of Easter. We also had some snow, and I think some of the weather changes would definitely impact things. So I think next week we're going to see a pickup, just because so much of the holiday weekend was in here. I know I have a listing in Plymouth, and we're purposely waiting until after Easter to list it. So 470 is the actives in Wright County in particular. That has been the same number as you can see here the last couple weeks, no changes. It's up over the weeks before that, but nothing remarkable. The ones without contingencies were at 413. So I always point out these two numbers to you guys, because if you were just going to shop for literally everything, you still wouldn't see 470, because that's a lot of agents would pull the contingencies out. So let's say 413, and that's a little bit up over last week. Nothing super remarkable. Pendings went up just a hair. You saw last week was 240. This is 243. We're looking for trends over time. It's just kind of slowly going up, which is what we anticipate in the spring. Closings went down a hair. I can't really explain why that would be, other than people not wanting to move, right before Easter. So that, that might make sense. I don't know how much of an impact that would have on people, but I would imagine the closings in the following week will be up because even though it's the end of the month, again, I just think people were thinking about that when they picked their closing dates. Anyway, not we don't want to deep dive into that because you can see the numbers kind of go up and down by the week. And for those of you that might be real estate agents watching, I do only pull the last 30 days to get that data. Showings per week per listing. This is the one that we like to watch. It's interesting because we had actually like a healthy jump up from 2.4 to 3.1 in Wright County. And I'm just kind of shocked by that little bit just because of the snow and the Easter thing. And just to speak, plain English, what it's saying is 3 showings per week was average between the 250 and 500K range. I will tell you personally, I had one of the busiest weeks I've had in a very, very long time. I really don't know what it was about last week, but it felt like everybody wanted to buy a house at the same time. Now, again, that's anecdotal. That's why we look at this data. When you look at Hennepin County, they went from 5.2 to 4.9. So again, about 5 showings per week per listing in the 250, 500K range. So, it's interesting that one county would go up and the other would go down. So you can't really make too much of that. It's just shows you there's a different pace in these 2 different counties. And so it'll be interesting to see what next week is after, we're out of that Easter span. 28 is average for days on market and 24 is median, which is interesting because I just told you the Twin Cities data at large. And remember, that's only for Wright County. So the trend is, exactly where we expect it to be. I mean, yes, it's higher than last week, but then, than the week before it was different. So it's because of how I'm pulling, market data. It's going to fluctuate a lot. We're looking for averages over time. And, again, if you're selling a house, expecting it to take about a month, I don't even honestly know that would be what you should anticipate because of, this just averaging things together.
Thanks for having me again, Erica. My name is Molly Zimmerman and I work at Bell Bank Mortgage. I have been a local lender working throughout the metro and concentrating a lot in Wright County since 2007. So a lot of experience working with home buyers in our area. But yeah, I appreciate you having me again.
Absolutely. We're always happy to have you on, and we appreciate that you're local and you're somebody that we can meet and have coffee with. And if they want to actually hand you paperwork and shake your hand, I love that. I think people underestimate that when they're comparing different lender partners, like not working with national. There's a lot of benefit. Today, I wanted to bring you on because I can't remember if in the past we've talked about closing costs, but one thing is there's people who need, or maybe they just want their closing costs covered by the seller. And before we get started, I just want to point out, we're going to define what closing costs mean for those of you who've never purchased a house before. But also I want to make a point that the seller has their own closing costs. And in very simple terms, you're paying for your title company. Somebody's doing that work to transfer the title and deed. That's not a responsibility from the lender or the real estate agent. There's a title company that helps with that. So Molly, how do we define closing costs for somebody who's never purchased a house before?
That is a great question. And it's funny because when I meet with buyers, I'm always like, okay, like I am not the one charging you all these fees. However, I'm the lucky person that gets to discuss all the costs that go into purchasing a property. So we've got a couple different people involved in transactions. Once you're purchasing a home, you've got your lender. So your lender is going to have some closing costs. You may look at possibly doing a rate buy down, maybe not. That would add some additional costs to what you need to bring to closing. We've got vendor fees, which would include having an appraisal done, credit report fees, miscellaneous things that we need to do on our side as a lender just to make sure everything can close appropriately. And then you've also got your title company involved on the buy side. So they're going to have their set of fees. And of course, you're going to pay some government fees as well. So there's recording fees to the government, there's a mortgage registration tax, but everything just kind of like adds up to what your actual costs are to purchase a home. In addition to that, as a homeowner, you also have property taxes and home insurance that you are responsible for. So at a closing, we have to pay certain amounts towards taxes and insurance. But also if you're escrowing within your monthly payment, which most buyers do, we also have to establish an escrow account for property taxes and home insurance. So, I mean, from a very, very general, like, I guess the level, you kind of think about it as roughly about 3% of the purchase price of a home. I mean, that's just kind of like where they tend to land. So you've got your down payment and then your closing costs on top of that, that you as a buyer are responsible to pay. The only way that you can get them paid by the seller is if it is negotiated as part of your offer. So it has to be written into a purchase agreement.
And that's where it's really hard when somebody doesn't introduce me to their lender partner and doesn't see us as a team, not using this avenue to like vent or anything. But if I don't know I don't dig into financials as a realtor. That's not my job. I need to stay in my lane. And so to know you and then to bridge that gap, because when I'm writing the contract, I am doing it on behalf of somebody else. I'm not buying all these houses. So then I ask somebody who's never purchased a house before, what are you thinking for your down payment? And I'm converting that to a percentage, not a dollar amount, which obviously that's easy math. But if the person doesn't know, they haven't figured that out, that's kind of problem number one for me when I'm writing a contract for somebody. Number two, then I go to the closing cost question where it's seller paid closing costs. And now the person's saying, well, what do they cost? And that's kind of like, okay, well, I can guess. I don't know enough about you. I'm not your loan officer. I don't know what you guys discussed on that. Do you need to ask or do you want to ask? And those are different questions. And it's really important to realize whether it's a need or a want, it's still a gift. And the seller is netting less money if they have to help contribute to your closing cost amount. And sometimes I know like that's a hard concept to understand, but again, the sellers have their own closing costs, so it is an ask, and that's why I call it a gift. It's like gift money.
Well, and
So
I think it's also, I was going to say, keeping in
yeah.
mind that depending on the loan program and your down payment, there's also limits to what a buyer can
Yes.
ask for. So that's another reason why it's really important to have that conversation with your lender, just to make sure that you are asking within the allowable limits. And then you understand what do I have to bring to the table, both if the seller is willing to agree to pay these, or B, if they're not willing to, what am I expected to bring to closing?
Correct. And this is a very small nuance, but a good listing agent knows or has access or is going to ask that question. I've had buyer's agents propose closing cost requests that are actually not allowed. And it's like, okay, I understand you supposedly need or want this, but it's actually not an allowable amount. So now we do have to counter and we do have to get into negotiations. And this is a part of what you should be asking for when you're looking for a good agent is this is hard information to figure out if somebody knows, but this is why we make these videos too, is to help consumers be more informed. Because I had somebody recently say to me, I'll take it all. Thank you.
Right.
It's like, take it all what? Like,
right. We need to quantify it.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, take it all what? Like you want $15,000. That is not allowed in this situation. Right. A percentage, we need to convert this, etc. So our original question is, why do some people, let's just stick with need, let's not say want. Why do some people need it and other people don't need this?
Well, I think the simple answer there is it's the availability of coming up with funds to close, right? So, I mean, if you're in a program where you have to put 3% down, you have to put 3% down. Your closing costs are above and beyond that. You can't finance a higher loan amount to pay for those closing costs because there are loan to value limits within each program. Therefore, you have to have the ability to pay for both that down payment and closing costs if you can't negotiate it into your contract. It's just kind of part of the game. I mean, we can look at different interest rate options, maybe where you take a little bit higher of a rate and then you get some lender credits to help lessen that amount a little bit, but there's only so much that we can usually cover. So, I mean, it's just got to talk to your lender, and you have to understand what is my minimum, what do I have to have for down payment, and what do these numbers look like? Have them send you options, more than just one. I mean, if you're getting one rate option from a lender, that may not be enough. You might need to dig a little bit deeper and see if you can be creative and make it work.
Do these programs like the Minnesota Housing and some of the city programs that we see occasionally, do they allow you to cover your closing costs? Or are they only for down payment?
They can be used for closing costs and down payment. The key
Oh,
there is what you're essentially doing is your first lien is still capped at 97% of the purchase price, and then you might be able to find some assistance to say, hey, take a chunk of money, pay that 3% in down payment, but then use the rest of whatever assistance you might qualify for to help offset some of those closing costs. So I
right.
mean, again, there's a lot of programs out there that could potentially benefit a buyer if they can't come up with the money, but you have to have those conversations with your lender because there's income limits, there's credit requirements. We just need to see what box we can fit you into.
Right. And that's why, again, it's so important to talk to lending before house shopping, before clicking those buttons online saying, I want to see this house. Do you fully understand your out of pocket expenses? Do you understand the expenses you're going to have on closing day? I
Mhm.
know one of the things I do when I first meet people is because I don't assume anybody talks to anybody about anything, is like, let's just talk about out of pocket. Where's the earnest money coming from? Are you prepared to pay for the inspection? None of this stuff, I mean, there's no other way to say it. None of this stuff is low cost. It is expensive to buy a house, and we need to have you ready to go.
Right.
Um, I mean, I know you and I can talk about this stuff for a long time. Is there anything else that you think we should bring up before we end this?
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I would add is keep in mind that the money you bring to closing has got to be verified by your lender. So, I mean, another reason why you need to have the conversation, we need to be able to see where is this money coming from,
Mhm.
verify that you have it before closing. Can't be ready on closing day. We have to verify ahead of time,
Yep.
and that it's from an appropriate source. So again, all the more reason the more that you can share with your lender, the better that we can set you up for success.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we're just a little oversimplistic at times where it's like, well, I saved some money and it's the assumption it's only going to down payment. There's still some other components that we need to consider, and some of them are rather expensive. And that's great that you saved up money. So now we need to come up with a game plan of how that's going to be split and divided and used so that it's being, yeah, the best for your personal situation. So, of course, like I said, we can talk about closing costs for quite a while. So we'll stop there and thank everybody for joining us. If they want to reach us, the link is provided in the paragraph, whether you're finding us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to look us up and reach out if you have any questions about your situation. We hope you have a great week. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.